here's the 1965 Subterranean Briggs, 2.5 horse, 8 cubic inch. Spent a lot of time underwater. More modern. It's got the gas tank opposite side of the muffler. Vacuum type carburetor. And on top there, 2.5 horse. That's the one with the JV welded up around the valve there. Probably just run this long. Lower down a little bit. Yeah, fuel idle right down. So here we got the 65 using the 65 wind-up starter here. This one doesn't have as much fruit punch as the 63 one. Hopefully we can get them going. A little different. Got this slide arm here on it instead of a knob. Okay, I will break down nice and slow. It would go even slower, but I had trouble starting it at that setting. So as I say, that's my 65 Subterranean engine there, and I managed to find the original starter and some parts here. So here's the original starter cover off it. It's kind of a ball of rust there, still usable, but and then here's the original carburetor off it there. As you can see, it's basically a twin for that one. I just haven't cleaned this one out or anything, so I stuck with the one that I had on it. So, as you say, this is different. It's got this slide arm here, so there isn't a pin that goes into the flywheel fins on this type. But it's like it's got a weak spring because it doesn't spin it over all that fast. I had trouble starting it with it. Anyway, so this is a 65 wind-up start, so that was available on these 65 models also. Had some different variants like that, and I actually discovered one more thing. The 63. I didn't know it, but apparently they made 3 horses in 63 also, because this guy here is it's hard to read, but 1963 model 80902. So it's got they had 3 starting variations. You had wraparound rope, then you had the normal recoil starter like this, and then you had this crank up one. So they made all kinds of variants of these different engines. So now I'll proceed to show you the internal parts on the 65. So I've got the cylinder head torn off the 65 Subterranean here, and I'm going to show you why I call it the Subterranean. This is the engine that was the whole crankcase and intake, everything was all full of like sand, and it was underwater, and it was all corroded. This, if you look the video up on my channel, 65 Subterranean Briggs, you'll see that it's all eat out around here, like 3/8 inch deep. The aluminum was gone, so I filled it back in with JB Weld. You can see that area there, it's starting to erode around the exhaust valve in between them there, but it's run, you know, a number of minutes now. So same thing in the cylinder. You can see this line down here was where the piston was sitting, and it took us about 2.5 tons of force in a hydraulic press to push that piston out. And so some of the cylinder in that area was corroded, so I had to fill it in with JB Weld also. So it seems to be, yeah, there's a big spot there that I think that's where the piston pin was, and it corroded really badly there. There would be an equal spot on the other side, you can kind of see there. But anyway, that's what I had to do with JB Weld. So the 65, I will now tear the crankcase cover off it and show you the internal parts. Oh, actually, first of all, I got to show, it's got this weird intake manifold. They didn't make these for very long, maybe, I'm guessing, a year or two. Yeah. Anyway, I believe 65 was maybe the last year for that. And I'll take this off and show you what it looks like. It looks almost like an airfoil shape there. The new engines, that's angled at like a 45-degree angle or something totally different. So that's unique to this block. So there you go. There's the unique shaped intake. You can see the intake valve shining in the background there. I can probably try to go a little bit closer. So it's almost like, if you look at it this way, it's almost like I call it an airfoil shape to the intake port there. And my guess, the reason they stopped building these was that they didn't flow very well, because you can see there's not much room there where the tube comes in at the bottom for the intake gas to get in there. So anyway, they stopped doing this way after a number of years. I'm not exactly sure if they made them, but I believe they stopped doing it in 65. Now I'll show the engine internals. So here's inside the crankcase. Got the original 65 crankshaft in it there. It's still rusty. Cleaned up the bearing surfaces and all that on it, but that's the original one. And camshaft, etc. I have others here. They're exactly the same. So cast iron camshaft, and it's got easy spin starting lobe on the intake. This side, I believe. Anyway, and then the now standard oil dipper, and the connecting rod there with the lock tab type locks on the 7/16 head bolts there. The reason I mention these is they change in the future in other videos. So, but anyway, oh, and of course, because this is an 8 cubic inch engine, it's got this cast in aluminum like external fin here, and then they use a flat sheet metal piece there to block the bottom to direct the air out past the exhaust. On this particular one, most times I would unscrew the muffler from the engine, but I didn't do it. I just cut it off and then welded it back on. Just because a lot of times on something as old as this and then as corroded to shape, you'll tear the threads right out and then you can't mount a muffler. So I bypassed that by cutting and welding. Anyway, so that's it for the 65 Subterranean and engines of its era with the funky intake manifold shape there.